good afternoon or good evening, anyone, according to the time zone where you are right now. It's amazing that we're doing this for the first time in our series, Talk to Your Meeting Doctors. Isn't it, Martin? We are repeating a conversation because we couldn't exhaust the theme on the first occasion. So this time we are going to expand as AI is becoming so prominent now. In LinkedIn, there's so many offers of open ChatGPT for this or that purpose. I'm not sure that resonates with all of you.
No, well, in actual, as you said, Paul, this is a first. We haven't done two sessions with the same guests back to back since we started this whole series about a little over 2 years ago. But I think what prompted it from our last discussion, we extended the discussion into the area or into the broader question of if AI was to make meetings redundant. Well, our initial question was, will AI make meetings redundant? But the end of our last conversation, we thought out loud, so what could meetings look like if AI was to become a valuable partner in the meeting sphere? And we thought that could be a really interesting topic just to free our minds a little bit and explore just the possibilities. And I think we have absolutely the best three guests that we could possibly have in that area, looking at it from very different perspectives. So maybe just open to the floor and let's just take the conversation wherever it brings us, guys.
Exactly. And just to remind our viewers who we have on the show today, in case you just missed the first episode, we have industry pioneer, both on the software maker, on the service side, on the consultancy side, Ilkka Mäkitalo and Karin Overy, because they are in fact pioneers and they've been using AI for meeting support in different ways since a couple of years now. They will tell you more about it. And also Jim Kalbach, not less renowned evangelist of Mural, and he is incredibly active in social media and now probably also unveiling a little bit of the secrets of how AI will help the Mural community to be more effective. Over to you, dear guest speakers. And Martin, perhaps remind us, the topic is really how can we replace meetings in the 21st century, something like that?
It's probably a little closer to saying, if we really stretched our imaginations and if we used AI in a really creative, innovative, and probably unexpected way, how could meetings be very different from what we currently understand them to be?
Yes, if I start, I think orientation and preparations for the meeting, they are highly important. And quite often when I'm part of meetings or preparing meetings, we open up the dialogue before the meeting. So people are bringing their topics, or if we have selected topics, we are already discussing before the meeting about them. There might be some materials, some annotations about the materials beforehand, so that everyone knows when we come together that what are we going to talk about. Something what we are playing with AI at the moment is like, how could we create the meeting agenda based on the pre-discussion, so that what people are bringing out, how important they are, how much time needs to be spent in different topics, so that there's like objective opinion about what the agenda should look like. So that's one part. So how to be prepared and how everyone is connected to the meeting topic so that we can get most out of the meeting. And Karin, you said that you were testing something. I was also testing something today, something new and fresh. And
it's something I realized, yes.
It's something that we are going to release soon. It's in internal test, and it's transcriptions that are then analyzed by AI in real time. So today I I was testing it just by myself, like just talking aloud, like my reflection about as a preparation for this meeting. So what is important for me about the meetings, and then every time I recorded something, I published it, and then it came part of AI analysis, summaries, and word clouds, and so on. And then when there was something that I thought that that was actually quite interesting, then I clicked the word from word cloud, and it took me back to transcription of my audio. So having that kind of possibility to like have iterative discussions before and during and after the meeting that is based on spoken language rather than just written text.
Oh, how very exciting.
That's really interesting. But that prompts me to ask two questions, Ilka. Are we actually saying then that we have a meeting before the meeting that AI is listening into, that AI crafts an agenda from that, let's call it a pre-meeting? And then, if I understood you correctly, are we saying that we can create a dynamic link from a summary, an AI-generated summary, and if we click on individual words that we're not sure if we're getting the exact full meaning, that it'll bring us back into the exact place in the transcript to elaborate if we need to do a backwards glance into the meeting? Did I get both of those correct?
Yes. So the pre-meeting is asynchronous, and it can be started whenever you like, who is hosting the meeting or who is the first one who has something to say about the meeting.
Yeah.
And then others will be notified that, there's some activities in here, I need to visit it. And then what we have been using for years already are like word clouds that are interactive, sentiment analysis. So if I see that, there's appreciation, there's concerns, I can click and I can get a filtered piece of content that is showing and highlighting that where people are like talking about their concerns or appreciations, and then also theme clusters that who are talking and what are they talking about this theme that is interesting for me.
Wow.
So and it can be synchronous, it can be asynchronous.
Jim,
yeah, I mean,
immediate reactions to that?
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
The possibilities that new technologies open up. Thing is beyond just AI. If we focus on AI here, but it's also Mural and even Zoom and other tools that we use. It opens up possibilities. The way that I, from a very human perspective, is that there's an imagination problem that we also have at the same time. Historically, you look at the introduction of new technologies into society, we oriented ourselves to prior models. We go marching into the future backwards kind of thing. That I like to give is television. When television first arrived, people said, great, we can now tell stage shows on a stage. If you remember the early TV shows in black and white from the 50s, moderator came out from behind a curtain because they thought, oh, we used to go to a theater, see this entertainment. Now I can broadcast that theater, that entertainment. They didn't reconceive the model of the entertainment. I think that's at the point that we're at right now. It's like the pandemic kind of snapped us out of, into this awakened consciousness. But now it's an imagination problem, I think, to rethink what a meeting is. And the point I made last time, Martin and Paul, was I think that the metaphor of a meeting is monolithic and singular, and that really comes from the old world. And what I think we need to do is shift to meet. We're not about a meeting, it's about how do we meet as a verb, right? And then we can thinking about words like co-create and making together and meaning, and as I was pointing out, it starts to flatten it out. So instead monolithic half-an-hour thing that fits in my schedule that's vertical, I think of a meeting, the next vertical, but to meet is horizontal, can start doing things before and after, and then the mode of co-creating then becomes smaller and smaller so that it's actually a continuum, right? It's not I'm working alone and we meet in kind of this vertical kind of way, but everything it's like horizontal. And we can be meeting as a verb, co-creating in a much more fluid, dynamic way. And I think that's what AI allows us to do.
Yeah.
Now, I think the barrier is our own imagination.
Yeah, that's awesome, Jim. I think we are capturing your sound well, but not the video. But it's the main message got through. But the point for me and the question for you and for all others, Martin and Story, is for me to step in because I'm burning on curiosity. Is that if the meeting concept changes and we are no longer talking about a meeting, but a process of collaboration that can be both synchronous and asynchronous, then my question to you is, what will be the specific value of the synchronous moment? What should we pay attention to those synchronous moments, and how AI can help us there?
Sometimes I've been describing a meeting as islands in a flow of a river. So it's a place where we meet, and something has happened before, something is going to happen after the meeting. And I think meetings are good for dialogue. And I think for me, important part of meetings is reflection, so that we have some kind of guiding principles that what good collaboration, what good meetings do look like. And then in the end of every meeting, we analyze that how did we manage. It might be about inviting diversity into the discussion. It might be about good listening. It can be about great questions. It can be about progress of the topics we are talking about. But having that kind of reflection, and AI can be used as a mirror for that. So what kind of reflections AI is doing based on what it gets when it's listening to our talk or our writings during the meeting. But in general, I think the quality of the dialogue is something we should be aiming at when we are changing how the meetings are organized.
Yeah, Karen, could I, from a facilitation point of view, like Ilke's point there about meetings being islands in the flow of conversation. Actually, in my PhD thesis, Ilke, I'm not sure if you've read it, but you certainly described very accurately one diagram that I wrote into that thesis, and I called it the kind of discourse flow of the organization, and that meetings punctuated that discourse flow. But Karen, from a facilitation point of view, that continuity, meeting to meeting, is that something then that if AI supported building that flow, is it a tool then that facilitators would need to really grab onto to be as much facilitators between meetings as in meetings?
I would say the short answer to that is yes.
Yeah.
I think facilitators need to embrace it,
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite interesting because I just did a sort of an internal paper on, delivery options. And it's interesting, in the world that we live in, there is still that space for completely analog, and I mean no electricity, let alone Wi-Fi and AI, to this other end, which is completely digitally facilitated with AI, and then there's something in between. So I think for facilitators, the world is definitely changing. But as I was listening to my listening, as I say, I was thinking about when Ilke was when you were first talking, I mean, these days I can be in a conversation here and all of a sudden my phone will tell me that I've been talking about, I don't know, dinner plates, whatever it is. So is part of this turning on the AI, it's about listening to the general conversation that we're having, not even just intentional conversations within, let's say, within a team. So maybe it's going to be the tool that, and we then also facilitate that says, okay, you don't need a meeting now, but now sounds like the time to have that meeting. So it actually helps us to decide when to have that meeting, because now it goes beyond AI and it needs our input. The other thing that I was thinking of, and this is more in the facilitation side of things, I mean, I'm sort of seeing starting to sense a whole range of things here, which is a benefit to clients, as let's say that. No, so not necessarily just within the meeting, but within the client base that I might be working with. If we're using AI here, we can then use, you know, whatever the visual aids are as well. We could do, you know, we could be talking and the mind map is growing in front of us. Yeah, so that we don't have to then, okay, we've got the chat type AI, but we also want the visual AI. And I think that will then help spark further creativity from us inside that dialogue, inside that session. And that's where I think the facilitation part becomes important, because we are going to have to steer it, at least at this point in time. That could be different in 10 years or sooner, you know, but help steer. When is it the right time? When do we have it on all the time or only part of the time, if that makes sense?
I think some of it too, from my perspective, just to dovetail in that a little bit, at least what I heard out of what you were saying, Karen, is that I think with the addition of very powerful technologies like AI and others, well too, when we get together and when we gather, I think that synchronous time will be optimized for the higher value collaboration aspects that we need to do together. So Ilka mentioned discussion. Yes, because that's co-creating meaning together. Before you get into a dialogue, you don't know where you're going to end, right? So you need that space to be able to create something new. Deciding something else that the reason why we get together, to have that conversation and see everybody's head nod and things like that. But I think there's something else too that's not have or soft anymore, which is women's is a reason why we need their synchronous in person or virtually. And Ilka said it last time really well. It's with me, and I've repeated this, Ilka, many times. To meet, but they don't like meeting, right? And it's that, why do people like to meet? Is because there's a certain humanity part of us that we, because whether we like it or not, work is human. That's part of what synchronous meeting is about.
Yes,
absolutely.
And when I link, Karen, what you said there conjured up a really, really strong image in my mind about the visuals and the potential for AI to contemporaneously generate visual representation of what's happening in the conversation. That's an intriguing possibility. And Jim, taking your point there about the value of the synchronous meeting versus the formative input of the asynchronous. So Ilka, I'm leaning back to your very opening idea that AI pre the meeting, we all don't have to be talking at the same time. We can be completely asynchronous. We have the possibility to craft an agenda from that. We have the possibility then to create a visual representation of the actual conversation. And then, Jim, to your point, our meeting then is about a higher value output. But, so here's my question. Do we have a fundamental shift in the purpose of meetings if we take that route that AI might help us to take? And does it accentuate the different types of meetings, and then the role that AI might play in different types of meetings could fundamentally be different across different meeting types?
I think one idea could be to expand the language. So if everything is just called meetings, then it creates a context of how to behave and what meetings are about. But if we could be more creative and talk about campfires and just forums and so on, whatever creative language and metaphors could be helping us to be different. And that is something that we need.
Yeah.
It's so easy to be in meeting mode. And then I was just today thinking when I was listening to a book that most of the books that are not business books are about life, not about work life. And can we remember any significant meeting from our history that we can like remember all our lives? And probably not. And what are we doing to each other that we are like spending so big part of our life in meetings that they don't matter that much at all?
That's exactly where my mind went. And it was funny because as I was just saying, you know, it changed from the noun meeting to verb. I was thinking, well, then what do we call the synchronous gathering? And the first thing that went through my mind, we need different labels for it. Like this is a decision-making session. This is a co-creation session and things like that. But I also realized that agile techniques kind of already do. If you've ever worked in an agile team as a developer, right? They don't just meet, they have grooming session, they have a sprint planning session, they have a demo, they have a retrospective, and even the sprint itself, a peak period of time. These are all containers, and nowhere does it an agile meeting. It's never called a meeting. It's always the purpose of that time slot so that the expectations and the operating norms that people bring to the table and the expectations are already known. Right. And that's what, you know, when we talk about reimagining what a meeting is, it's kind of that level of, I think, operating norms and you're reimagining those that we can. What does AI do? It gives us superpowers to be able to do that. If we can imagine it.
Yeah, Jim, that's a really interesting one. That the idea of the agile framework, but agile, as I understand it, and correct me please if I'm wrong here, but agile is normally oriented towards software development, broadly speaking. Would that be correct? So if we combine Jim's point there with Ilka's point about needing a new lexicon or a new language to define what our meeting is about, we do away with the word meeting and we pick words that reflect what we are going to be doing when we come together. Is that where we're headed?
Well, I personally think that makes an awful lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I think, as Jim said, it already gives texture and purpose and meaning to whatever the gathering is, or what the intention of the event is. I've always sort of said, you know, if you can get your URL from your website to kind of state what it is that you do, then that's already a good thing, because then when people look for you, it's easy enough to find. So if we can adopt that a little bit with the purpose of meeting or gathering or to meet or why should we meet, then at least then I think there's a bit more clarity for the individuals. And that goes beyond AI. I think that comes back to, you know, we're human beings, we are tribal, we like to see each other, we still like to get together. So does the AI just become another member of the team, if you like, or of that community or that tribe, rather than being here or here? It's actually, we're just here together and it's just another one of us. So which brings me to something else that I think this all does. It starts to, what's the impact on being inclusive and diversity? Does the AI actually help that if we're not afraid of it? I think that's important. Yeah.
How would you see it, just to extend that point, Karen, how would you see it assisting that?
Well, if I think of it, let's go back to just the virtual realm, what I call the virtual realm. You know, if we've got a meeting here right now, we're in different locations, we're in different places, we've got different experiences in this case.
Yeah.
So it's already showing diversity. It's showing, you know, from time zones, from experience, from whatever, and it's quite inclusive at the same time. So I think maybe part of this idea of rounding to meet and using AI is not seeing it as out there, but part of. So let's start being more inclusive. And I think it'll help us all to be more inclusive, because as we already do with Ilka's product, is that it already helps people because it gives us different ways to connect.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's written, spoken, imaginative, you know, so we can be having little video conversations, we can be having all sorts of things, sort of almost all at the same time.
So in that context, so you provoke another, I think, a really important idea, that the role that AI fulfills in the context of people coming together. So I'm deliberately avoiding using the word meeting now, so that we shift our thinking away from preconceived notion of what meeting is. So the role that AI fulfills before the meeting, before the get together, during our engagement, and after our engagement, then has to become complementary to 3 different phases of a conversation flow, rather than setting out discrete individual get-togethers for some purpose or other. Is that one of our biggest challenges then, to find and define that role for AI in this evolving landscape of getting together?
I mean, I think there's an acceptance phase as much as anything. Yeah. So for us in the room, we think it's exciting, but for many that are not in this room, they are terrified. You know?
I've actually been starting to see it
Sorry.
part of what we should mean when hybrid work and hybrid work models, right? And everybody's talking about hybrid work. Basically, just the policy of where you work, right? It's, are you in the office or at home? I think that's very limiting. I think we can also add work. I have a hybrid and async work. I think the point Karen brings up for me is that there's a hybrid who. It's not just but it's also the hybrid who. So when we think about hybrid work, it's part man, part human, part machine as well too. And we need to think about the hybridity that AI brings to our humans, right? For me, that's the future of work. And when I say hybrid, I'm thinking about all those dimensions, because that's what average employee or team will have to deal. They'll have to deal with different wheres, different whens, and different whos. Is that me making the decision or the AI making the decision? So there's a hybridity there as well too.
Yeah,
I remember some discussions years back where we were discussing about a perfect human being that knows everything, has right answers to everything, and then we ended up to conclusion that that would be horrible. No one could stand that kind of person, and I think there's a danger that AI is becoming that person that knows everything, has right answers to everything, and it's something that everyone starts to hate. But what I think about how we should, like, what could be our attitude towards work, and I really love the word exploration. So how can we explore that what is happening, and what kind of diversity do we have, and what can we learn from each other's opinions and stories and experiences and so on. And what is personally really like giving a lot of energy for me is what we are testing also at the moment is like generative AI that is analyzing the dialogue, but it's not like ready-made analysis. It's based on prompting, so that you can ask what any kind of analysis, you can explore that what is happening in here. You can give like theoretical frameworks to AI, and it's doing amazing job. So you can ask it to analyze this gathering based on this communication theory. So can you give examples where we did good job, and what kind of mistakes did we do during this dialogue based on this theory, and is there something we could improve? So having this kind of like it's challenging for facilitators. You have to know, you have to have a lot of knowledge in order to do great prompting. So it's not doing it by itself, but you can develop your skills in that.
Absolutely. And talking about facility, I think that's one of the skills that we need to learn, that we'll get better at, which is, get better at asking questions. And that's kind of where we've been at for a long time. Where we might have been able to get away with it in some ways, now we won't so much, poor questioning. So the skill of asking questions and I think coming back to what, that creativity, so that we can explore those questions with creativity and then see where it goes. And I mean, maybe also there's something, and this is now from the human side, is to be, I can't believe I just said that, but you know what I mean, from the human side, is that we are not afraid to challenge this AI, whatever this being is. It's part of that thinking process. And don't just take everything on face value. I mean, we don't do it with humans, or we shouldn't, so we shouldn't do it with it either.
And can I just expand that point, Karen? That idea of thinking, and can I link that with Ilkka, the point that you made there about exploration? Is it fair to say that AI is dumb without people? So that's a statement, and just think about that. Without people input, without the seed, because Jim, I think you mentioned it, and Karen, I think you mentioned it a bit previous, that the input, AI needs input in order to do its analysis, to do its recounting, to do its sorting and its categorization and stuff. So that's thought number one. But thought number two, extending that, one of our leading journalists here in Ireland, his name is Fintan O'Toole. He wrote an article about, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks ago about AI. He asked AI to write an article in his style. And he said it did a brilliant job, but he said he always has an opinion in his articles. He stands for something. He brings a value or an ethos or a political outlook or something to his article. He said that's what was missing from the AI clone of his article. So here's the question mark. While we can marvel at this point in the evolution of AI, AI is still dumb without people. So I go back to my previous question. Is our first task to really critically define the role of AI in supporting our human get-togethers so that it doesn't get in the way of exploration, creativity, analysis, so that it supports those, but it doesn't get in the way of those? Is that our challenge? Define its purpose, define its boundary, its role, because we can't do anything without people at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think the answer is partly in the question, at least the way you phrased it is almost rhetorical. But I think the challenge is to define which AI is going to implement our humanity when we come together as teams, right? And that may be different in different situations, and that might be different in different fields and industries too. I think for me, the part of humanity that's missing from AI, like you said, AI doesn't work without the human input. Part of that input are our emotions and caring about something and having, because you can't have an opinion if you don't have emotions, right? People don't have emotional capacity, often can't make decisions. We can't decide unless we bring our emotions to the table. I would also say our imaginations as well too, that we need to bring our emotions and our care about to AI as imagination, because otherwise you're at just everything's going to be mediocre. Like I think your colleague recognized when that AI article was written for him. It's just kind of flat, right? So those are the aspects, I think, emotional intelligence, passion, the things that we need to bring to the table, and then let AI elevate our ability to do that type of emotional work, imaginative work.
That makes me question, do we always need to have that imaginative work? So that's assuming that we need to have a meeting or a gathering where imagination and exploration is required, but that's not always the case. What just comes to mind then is you know, which has been sort of a hot topic, is, you know, law. So if you're, you know, I was recently asked to go and do a, what do they call it here, jury citation. In Australia, we call it jury duty, but, you know, they call you up and you're supposed to be one of the people that decides some other person's life. I can assure you, I have no desire to do that at all. I'm happy to watch Criminal Minds. It's removed and it's in a screen somewhere. I do not want to be that person because I have too much emotion, too much opinion, right? So, which makes me think, in a different situation, is it the blandness, if you like, or that blankness of the AI that actually that doesn't have the emotion attached to it? Can it then actually make better decisions for us in some scenarios, like in the case of law?
I think the answer might be yes. And when comment, one thing that I was is that the only thing that would be left over would be those human aspects like converse, creativity, decision, and imagination, because assuming to that question you just asked, that some of the lower level tasks and even lower level decision making would come off of our plates. So the only thing we're being asked to do is bring our whole selves to the table.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. I just kind of made that assumption, but yeah, you clarified it for me, Karen. Thanks for that.
I think, yes. You know, so there's certain things that, in fact, if we embrace it for tasks.
I didn't get that.
I'll be quiet, talking about AI. I was just telling Siri to be quiet. Timing, my friend, beautiful. Anyway,
AI is struggling to understand you, Karen.
always talking to me. I'm always telling him to go away, constantly. So yeah, so I guess it's, you know, if it takes away some of the most mundane tasks that we have to do, then it allows us to, as you say, bring our fuller self to the thing, whether we're facilitating something, whether we're chairing something, however, whatever that conversation is. But then as humans, it's about deciding what we need to let go of and trust. So trust has to come into here as well somewhere.
Yeah, I'm thinking about words like trust, passion, energy, intuition. And when we are meeting with others, we have a wish that something would be changing after the meeting. And so can AI directly support the change of behavior? I don't think so. So we are not following how AI is leading us. No, it can be supporting, and we are bringing the intuition and energy. And human beings are the ones that are affecting to each others.
My imagination has my little robotic friend sitting beside me, helping me get through life. It's way too much stuff. Yeah.
For me, what all of this means is future work is that the makeup of a group of people that gather, I think their perspectives and makeup, I think that's going to matter even more. Right? We don't pay attention to that nearly enough, in my opinion, right now. Things like, different personality types, and I'm not necessarily saying that's the solution, comes together and when and how actually going to see eye to eye. And I think the other thing that it means is we need a new skill, and you use the word skill. of learned how, sleepwalk through the office we learned how to sleepwalk through meeting from the office space. We need a new, we need to invent a new common sense, for interacting with each other. And there's going to be this skill set that I think could be made explicit and taught as a skill set. You can learn how to be a better collaborator. For me, I'm thinking about things, the relational intelligence of human beings is going to change that dynamic. And then the other one, the skill sets that just even show up at work new.
I have an example where AI had opinion. Would you like to hear a story?
Absolutely,
Yes.
for sure.
I was conducting a big band rehearsal, and there was a new composition that we were playing, and the composer was in the rehearsal. And quite often when I stopped waving my hands, I suddenly hit Siri from my Apple Watch, and we just finalized the first play of the new composition. And then I hit Siri, and she said that, sorry, I didn't understand that.
Exactly.
So AI is dumb without people. Is at the end of the day. Paul, I'm keeping an eye on our timing because Jim, I'm very conscious that you have a kind of a hard stop on the half hour. Could I attempt a bit of a roundup? Because my mind is floating all over the place the way that our conversation has gone. But actually, there's 2 or 3 key threads that I think have been consistently woven through our discussion. Ilke, you opened with talking about meeting prep and orientation, but we very quickly moved on to the idea that we need to change the language. It's not about meeting because it conjures up too much preconceived ideas. So that you then took us, Ilke, again, you took us into the idea of transcripts and exploration of transcripts and the use of AI to analyze transcripts, summarize transcripts, and then create dynamic links back into the transcript if the summaries don't fully make sense to us. And that's all really valuable material. But this need to shift our thinking on the concept of meeting, and that conjured up the idea of a before, a during, and an after. Central to all of that is this idea that as human beings, we want to get together. But sometimes a big challenge that we have is trying to decipher all of the inputs that are taking place during our get-togethers. So where AI may become a real partner is in the preparation piece, as Ilke identified early on, where it could help us prepare agendas. In the meeting piece, where it can help us to dynamically either create visuals. Karen, you made that point, and there's a real visual out of that, the idea of mind maps and dynamically representing the conversation as it's happening. And then there's the idea of doing summaries after the event with links back into the transcripts to bring us into the full flow if that was necessary. Ilke, can I link that back to the visual that you gave us of conversation, the organization conversation being a river? I called it a river of discourse in my own meeting research, and that islands or meetings are islands within that conversation flow or that river of discourse within organizations. All of that was leading us to say, so what is the precise role that AI can fulfill in the context of getting together for whatever purpose? But that equally brought us into the area of, and I'll pick a number of words that we used. We talked about exploration, creativity, analysis, imagination, emotion. And I won't say we concluded, but I think we explored the idea that, well, AI isn't emotional. It doesn't have emotion. It gives us bland summary, but it doesn't infuse our engagements with passion, with commitment, with diversity, imagination, and stuff. So perhaps our biggest challenge with using AI in pursuit of supporting our get-togethers is to first define what it's meant to do to augment our natural and inherent human need, which is to get together and be emotional, be explorative, be inquisitive, all of the things that AI doesn't seem to be particularly good at. And we just need to figure out, before we go too far forward with AI, to say, what is it good at, and keep it doing what it's good at, and don't let it try and replace the bit that people are not only good at, we are the only ones capable of being emotional, sensitive, explorative, and so on. And maybe out of this conversation, we might not have redefined what our meetings should be, but maybe we've just put a mark on the ground to say, well, let's not engage AI too much more until we very clearly decide what is the boundary for it, how can it add value, rather than being in awe of what it can do that we can't do. But let's not forget what we can do that it can't do.
That's amazing.
I do, except for that I don't know if we should. I think the way you framed it was first figure it out and then start using. I actually think on that. No, a lot of the things that we were talking about, I don't know what it's going to be like in years, what a meeting will be. Suggesting, and I really liked your point about mindset. I think it's the mindset that you bring to it and the intentionality. I think it's, if you without knowing how it's going to help, you're doing that intentionally and paying attention to it. If that makes sense, it's a nuanced difference from I think the way they, maybe we're in agreement, but I just want to see Martin.
I mean, if I can add to that, I think I may have missed a few words that you just said, but I thought it's not about this first, then that. I think it's this and that.
Absolutely.
And we need to be equally creative with the AI in how we want to use it, how it can benefit us or the environment that we're in or the group that we're with, rather than, no, we're not ready for you yet, because it's here. It's not about not being ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's already here. So it's how do we harness it, I guess.
In one word, AI will force us to be even clever, smarter.
Yes.
And that's the challenge we as a species are going to face, and I'm sure we'll overcome it. Dear viewers, dear guest speakers, thank you so much for being with us here today and for this second part of our conversation. Stay tuned for these, as we are planning for more conversations on the subject with other guest speakers, right? Martin, I think we are not going to stop in the summer, in August and September. Some episodes are planned, and it will be great to keep in touch with these guest speakers and keep this community alive and in contact with each other. So let's close this program today. Thank you so much.